He walked in wearing borrowed boots and perfect lies. She was drowning in debt, fighting desperately for her father's dying dream. He had billions, but starved for something real. What they'd discover would cost them everything. The boardroom smelled like expensive leather and ambition. 23 floors above the city, James Sterling sat at the head of a table that cost more than most people earned in a year, listening to executives argue about quarterly projections with all the passion of reading a phone book. This was his company, his empire. Sterling Capital had made him a billionaire before 30, but sitting there, watching mouths move, James felt absolutely nothing. "Mr. Sterling?" His CFO leaned forward. "Your thoughts on the acquisition?" 24 eyes turned toward him, expectant, calculating what answer would advance their careers. James straightened his $800 tie. "Approve it. Move forward." Nods rippled around the table. Of course he approved it. James Sterling never made mistakes. If only they knew how hollow gold felt. The meeting dissolved. James stood and walked toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below, tiny cars, tinier people, all living lives that probably felt more real than his. "Sir?" His assistant appeared. Monica. Efficient, forgettable despite 3 years of service. "Your 7 o'clock at Marchand's is confirmed. Ms. Whitmore will meet you there." Amanda. His fiancée. Former model, current socialite, future Mrs. Sterling if everything went according to their plan. Their plan, not his. "Cancel it," James said. Monica blinked. "Sir? Clear my schedule for 3 months." 3 months? Her tablet nearly slipped. "But the Tokyo conference—" "Richard handles Tokyo. I'm taking a leave of absence." He walked out before she could protest, leaving behind the empire that suddenly felt like a very expensive prison. The apartment echoed. 2,300 square feet of imported marble and custom furniture. It had appeared in Architectural Digest. People called it stunning. James called it empty. He poured scotch, 60-year-old, obscenely expensive. It tasted like burned wood and wasted money. He drank it anyway, watching city lights blur below. His phone buzzed. Amanda. 3rd call today. He ignored it. Text. "Where are you? Everyone's asking. This is embarrassing." Embarrassing, not "I'm worried," just embarrassed that her accessory had malfunctioned. James opened his contacts, scrolled through hundreds of names, business associates, networking connections, people who wanted things. Who did he actually know? Really know? The scroll ended without an answer. He drained the scotch, set the glass down with a sharp crack against marble, and made a decision that felt both insane and like the first sane thing he'd done in years. The thrift store smelled like old cotton and other people's abandoned lives. James stood in the work clothes section, running his fingers over flannel shirts with frayed collars and jeans with honest wear at the knees. The elderly clerk watched him suspiciously. Fair enough. James looked exactly like what he was. A man in a $1,500 suit shopping at Goodwill. "Help you find something?" Her voice carried decades of service industry patience. "Work clothes," James said. "Mechanic or construction. Something real." Her eyebrows climbed. Real, not designer distressed. Actually worn by someone who actually worked. Something shifted in her expression. Understanding, maybe, or pity. Size. Medium. Large in shirts, maybe. She moved through the racks with the efficiency of long practice, pulling items that James would never have chosen. A denim work shirt with Pete embroidered on the pocket, canvas pants with paint stains, a fleece jacket that had seen better decades. "Try these. Changing rooms back there." James emerged 5 minutes later transformed. The clothes hung differently than tailored wool. They felt broken in, comfortable in a way nothing in his closet ever had. The shirt smelled faintly of laundry detergent and work. He looked like someone who belonged in the real world. "Better," the clerk said. "You pull off working man better than rich boy playing dress-up. Boots are over there. You'll need steel toe if you're serious." James bought 6 outfits. Steel-toed boots, a canvas tool bag that someone had clearly loved once upon a time. When the clerk rang him up, $83 total, he pulled out cash, small bills, money that felt like it had weight and meaning. "What's the job?" she asked, handing him change. "Finding out who I am when I'm not who everyone thinks I am." She studied him for a long moment. That's either the smartest thing I've heard all week or the dumbest. Guess you'll find out which. James drove out of the city at dawn, watching glass and steel give way to suburbs, then to smaller towns, then to something that felt like stepping back in time. Two-lane roads, grain silos, family diners with parking lots full of pickup trucks. He'd left behind his Mercedes. Too obvious. Instead, he drove a 10-year-old Ford he'd bought cash from a used lot, no questions asked. The previous owner had left a parking permit hanging from the mirror and a worn baseball cap in the cup holder. James wore both. Another layer of camouflage. The GPS led him to Riverside, population 4,200 according to the faded sign. Main Street had that struggling small-town look. Half the storefronts occupied, half papered over with "for lease" signs. A diner called Meg's, a hardware store, a post office, a cafe with hand-painted windows advertising "best coffee in 3 counties." And there, on the corner where Main met Oak, Mitchell's Auto Repair. James parked across the street and studied it. The building had good bones underneath the exhaustion. Brick, probably 80 years old, with big garage bays and windows that would flood the workspace with natural light if they weren't so dusty. The sign above the door, Mitchell's Auto Repair, with a vintage car logo, had been hand-painted once upon a time, now faded to ghost colors. A woman appeared in the doorway. Even from across the street, James could see her clearly. Mid-20s, dark reddish hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing coveralls that had seen serious use. She held a rag in one hand, wiping grease absently while surveying the empty street with an expression that landed somewhere between determination and despair. Sarah Mitchell. He'd researched her before coming. 26. Inherited the shop from her father 2 years ago. Behind on property taxes. Being aggressively pursued by Derek Vaughn, who owned the big dealership outside town and wanted this land for expansion. She looked nothing like Amanda. No designer clothes, no professional makeup, no calculated poses. She looked tired and real, and like she was carrying the weight of the world on shoulders that weren't quite broad enough for it. James watched her disappear back inside, then checked his reflection in the rearview mirror. The man looking back could pass for someone looking for work, someone honest, someone far from boardrooms and billion-dollar decisions. He grabbed his new tool bag, empty except for a few items he'd bought at a hardware store, enough to be plausible, and crossed the street. The garage bay door was open. Inside, an older man, black, maybe mid-40s, graying at the temples, was bent under the hood of an ancient Chevrolet, his movements speaking decades of practiced skill. "Excuse me?" James called from the doorway. The man straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. He had the kind of face that had smiled often, laugh lines deep around his eyes, but right now looked wary. "Help you? I'm looking for work. Heard this place might need an extra set of hands." "Heard wrong." The woman's voice came from deeper in the garage. Sarah emerged from a small office, that same rag still in her hand, eyes sharp with assessment. "We're not hiring." "I work cheap," James said. "I'm good with engines, cars, trucks, doesn't matter. Just need something steady for a while." "Everyone works cheap when they're desperate." Sarah moved closer, and James saw details the distance had hidden. The shadows under her eyes, the small scar on her left cheek, the way her jaw was set against the world. "What's your name?" "Jim." "Jim." He paused half a second too long. "Collins." Her eyes narrowed. She'd caught the hesitation. Great start. "Where you from, Jim Collins?" "East. Moved around a lot. Looking to settle somewhere quieter for a bit." "Uh-huh." She crossed her arms, and the gesture was pure skepticism. "And you just happened to pick Riverside? Just happened to walk into the one garage in town that's clearly not exactly thriving?" The older man coughed, something that might have been covering a laugh. James held Sarah's gaze. "I picked Riverside because it's the kind of place where people probably still help each other. And I walked into your garage specifically because anyone who keeps a 1950s sign that beautiful deserves respect." Something flickered in her expression. Not trust, but maybe the smallest crack in the armor. "I don't have money to pay decent wages," she said flatly. "I can barely pay Marcus here, and he's been loyal for 30 years. Pay me in experience then, and lunch if you're offering. I'll take minimum for the first month. If I'm not earning my keep by then, Cut me loose. First month? Sarah laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Son, I don't know if this place has a first month left in it. The honesty in that admission hit harder than any sales pitch. James saw Marcus shift uncomfortably, saw the way Sarah's shoulders tightened like she regretted saying it out loud. Then what's one more set of hands in the meantime? James heard himself say. Worst case, I help keep the lights on a little longer. Best case, maybe I help turn things around. You're either naive or crazy, but Sarah was studying him differently now, considering. I've been called both. James smiled, his real smile, not the boardroom one. Look, I know you don't know me. I know I'm just some guy who walked in off the street, but I'm a good worker. I show up on time and I don't cause trouble. Give me a week. Just a week. If I'm not pulling my weight, I'm gone. Marcus spoke for the first time. Boss, we could use help on the Thompson job. Transmission rebuild's killing my back. Sarah shot him a look that was half annoyance, half gratitude. Her eyes moved between Marcus and James, calculating something James couldn't read. Finally, she sighed. Fine, 1 week, $7 an hour. That's all I can spare. You show up at 7 tomorrow morning. You're late, you're gone. You break something expensive, you're gone. You give me any reason to regret this, you're gone. Clear? Crystal. Good. She turned away, dismissing him. Now get out. We have actual paying work to do. James wanted to laugh. No one had talked to him like that in a decade. It felt weirdly refreshing. Yes, ma'am. See you at 7. He walked back into the sunshine, pulse quickening with something he hadn't felt in so long he'd almost forgotten its name. Purpose. Behind him, through the open garage door, he heard Marcus say quietly, "That boy's running from something." And Sarah's response, "Aren't we all?" James climbed into his truck, started the engine, and realized his hands were shaking slightly. Not from nerves, from excitement, from the terrifying, exhilarating sensation of stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was ground below or just open air and faith. Tomorrow he'd show up at dawn. He'd get his hands dirty with real work. He'd labor beside people who didn't know his name or his net worth or anything except what his hands could do. He'd find out who Jim Collins could be when James Sterling disappeared completely. The sun climbed higher over Riverside, painting everything in shades of gold and possibility. And for the first time in years, James Sterling felt something close to hope. James woke at 5:30 to an alarm on a phone disconnected from any corporate network. The motel room was basic, thin walls, questionable carpet, a rattling window unit. He'd never slept better. The pre-dawn darkness felt different here, quieter. The city always hummed. Riverside just breathed. James showered in adequate water pressure, shaved with a disposable razor, and pulled on his thrift store work clothes. The denim shirt still smelled faintly of someone else's detergent. Pete's shirt. The face in the mirror looked back. Stubble left deliberately uneven, hair that needed cutting, eyes adjusting to this version of himself. "You sure about this?" His reflection didn't answer, but James went anyway. Mitchell's auto repair looked different in the dawn light. Softer. The faded brick caught the first rays of sun and glowed warm, and for a moment James could imagine what this place must have looked like 30 years ago when Sarah's father first opened those doors. He parked on the street and killed the engine. 6:45. 15 minutes early felt right, eager but not desperate. The garage bay door was already open. Inside, lights blazed against the lingering darkness, and James could see Marcus moving around, setting up for the day with the practiced efficiency of ritual. Coffee brewing somewhere. The smell drifted out into the cool morning air, rich and honest. James grabbed his empty tool bag and walked in. Marcus looked up, eyebrows rising. "Well, you actually showed. Said I would. Lots of folks say things, fewer do them." Marcus gestured to a break area. Card table, mismatched chairs, ancient coffee maker. Coffee first. Can't do good work without it. The cabinet held an assortment of storytelling mugs. James chose plain blue and poured coffee dark enough to be opaque. He took a sip. Strong, bitter, exactly what he needed. Nothing like the single-origin beans his assistant delivered daily. This was coffee that meant business. "Good?" Marcus asked. "Perfect. Sarah makes it strong enough to wake the dead." Marcus poured his own cup, studying James. "So, Jim Collins. Where'd you learn mechanics? James had prepared for this. My uncle had a shop, spent summers there as a kid. And transmissions? Some, more engine work. But I follow instructions and I'm not afraid of getting dirty. Marcus's eyes held his, the kind of look that spotted lies at 50 paces. Then he nodded. Thompson's Buick needs a transmission rebuild. You assist me, watch, learn, hand me tools. Think you can handle that? Yes, sir. Don't call me sir, makes me feel old. Marcus is fine. Marcus, then. Footsteps made them turn. Sarah appeared from the office, looking like she'd been there even longer than Marcus. Hair in the same messy ponytail, coveralls showing grease, clipboard thick with worn papers. She stopped when she saw James. Surprise flickered across her face. That he'd actually returned. It vanished behind professional distance. You're early. Seemed right. She poured coffee in a, nevertheless, she persisted mug. Marcus filling you in? Thompson transmission, Marcus confirmed. I'll keep him supervised. Good. Sarah turned, leaning against the makeshift counter, and James saw the exhaustion in the lines of her face that morning light made harder to hide. She looked like someone who'd been fighting a war she was slowly losing. Standard rules. Safety glasses when working. No shortcuts that compromise quality. And if you don't know something, ask. We can fix ignorance. Can't fix stupidity. Understood. My lunch is at noon, half hour. You brought food? James hadn't thought that far ahead. I'll figure something out. Diner down the street does a decent plate lunch for $6. Megs. Tell her you work here. She'll take care of you. Sarah's eyes moved to his hands, and James saw her notice what he'd hoped she wouldn't, that despite his best efforts to rough them up, they still looked too soft. You sure you've done manual labor before? Been a while, James admitted, which was true enough. But I'll catch up fast. You better. She drained her coffee in 3 long swallows and pushed off the counter. I've got paperwork that won't do itself. Marcus, holler if you need me. She disappeared back into the office, taking her wall of tension with her. Marcus chuckled quietly. Don't mind her. She's wound tighter than a spring lately. The business struggling? That's a kind way to put it. Marcus rinsed his mug, set it in a plastic dish rack. Come on, let me show you what we're working with. The Buick was a 1985 LeSabre, powder blue with that particular old car smell, time, use, memories. Mrs. Thompson had owned it since new, Marcus explained. Refused to upgrade despite her kids begging. Some folks understand good things are worth keeping, Marcus said, even when keeping them ain't easy. James heard the subtext. They weren't just talking about cars. The work was harder than expected, physical in ways that made muscles remember they existed. By 9, his back complained. By 10, his hands hurt. By 11, he understood why Marcus mentioned his back. The angles required were between awkward and anatomically impossible. But something else happened. He forgot sterling capital, forgot stock prices and acquisition targets. There was only the immediate problem. This bolt, this part, this gasket that had to sit exactly right. It was pure, simple, real, in a way nothing in his life had been for years. Hand me the half-inch socket, Marcus said from somewhere deep in the engine compartment. James found it, passed it over. His hands were already developing small cuts, his fingernails collecting grime that would probably take days to fully clean out. Other one, deep socket, James corrected, and this time, Marcus grunted approval. Such a small thing, that grunt, but it sent warmth through James's chest that felt almost childish in its intensity. They worked in comfortable silence, broken only by requests for tools, or Marcus explaining what he was doing and why. The man was a natural teacher, patient but direct, expecting competence but allowing for learning. You're not half bad at this, Marcus said eventually, wiping grease from a part with a rag that had probably never been clean. Slow but careful. I can work with careful. Thanks. James felt an absurd amount of pride at that small compliment. When was the last time anyone had acknowledged his actual work rather than just the results? How long have you been doing this? 27 years in this shop. Started when Sarah's daddy hired me fresh out of community college. I was determined to prove a black mechanic could be just as good as anyone. Marcus's hands never stopped moving while he talked, each gesture practiced and sure. Daniel Mitchell gave me that chance when most folks in this town wouldn't have. Treated me like family. Taught me everything that mattered. And Sarah grew up in this shop. Could diagnose a sick engine by sound before she could drive legally. Daniel was so proud of her, talked about her like she hung the moon. Something sad crossed Marcus's face, deep and old. Heart attack took him 2 years back. Sarah wasn't ready to take over, but life doesn't wait for ready. Doesn't care if you're ready. James thought about his own father. A man he saw maybe twice a year, their conversations limited to business and obligation. No passion, no legacy beyond money. She seems like she's doing well, Marcus snorted. She's doing her best, which isn't the same thing. That Vaughn character has been squeezing her since the funeral. Knows she's vulnerable, knows the shop's on shaky ground. Makes offer after offer, each one more insulting than the last. Why doesn't she sell if it's that bad? The look Marcus gave him was sharp enough to cut. Because this place is all she's got left of her father. Because she promised him on his deathbed she'd keep it going. Because giving up isn't in her DNA. He went back to work. Money isn't everything, Jim. Some things are worth fighting for, even when the fight looks hopeless. James thought about his penthouse, his cars, his investment portfolio, all the things he'd accumulated that meant absolutely nothing. Yeah, he said quietly. I'm starting to understand that. Noon came like a blessing and a curse. James's body screamed relief at the break. His pride screamed embarrassment at how much he hurt after just a few hours. Marcus straightened with the practiced caution of someone whose back had earned its complaints. Lunch. You heading to Meg's? Think so. Good. Get the meatloaf if she's got it. Woman makes meatloaf that could convert a vegetarian. Marcus pulled off his gloves. I'm eating in the office with Sarah. We've got accounts to look at. The way he said accounts made it clear this wasn't going to be a pleasant lunch conversation. James walked 3 blocks to Meg's diner, feeling every step in forgotten muscles. The afternoon sun was warm, Riverside fully awake, a few cars, people nodding hello to strangers. Meg's was pure Americana, red vinyl booths, checkered floor, long counter. A woman in her 60s with iron gray hair smiled when he entered. Help you, hun? Heard you've got good meatloaf. I'm working at Mitchell's. Something warm entered her expression. Sarah sent you. Sit yourself down. Coffee? The meatloaf came with mashed potatoes and green beans. Marcus had been right. It was worth converting for. James ate slowly, listening to conversations. Farmers discussing weather. 2 women talking grandchildren. Normal life. Real connections. His phone buzzed. The corporate one he'd promised himself he wouldn't check. James pulled it out despite his better judgment. 17 missed calls. 43 texts. His inbox was in the hundreds. He turned it off and put it away. Everything okay? Meg appeared with a coffee refill. Better than it's been in a long time. She smiled like she understood exactly what he meant. Sarah's good people. That shop's been part of this town since before I opened this place. Hate to see her struggling. She'll figure it out, James heard himself say with more confidence than he felt. Hope you're right, hun. We need more folks willing to fight for what matters. Meg moved to another table, and James finished his lunch thinking about fighting and what mattered and why he'd spent so many years pursuing things that didn't. When he got back to the shop, Sarah was standing outside the office door, phone pressed to her ear, and even from across the garage, James could see the tension in her shoulders. I understand that, but I need more time. The payment's coming. I just need 30 more days. Pause. Please, I've never missed a payment before. Another pause, longer. Fine. Yes, thank you. She ended the call and stood there for a moment, forehead pressed against the doorframe, breathing like someone trying not to break. James wanted to fix it, wanted to make one call and solve all her problems, wanted to be the hero who rode in and saved the day. But he couldn't. Not as Jim Collins. And maybe not at all, because Sarah Mitchell didn't look like someone who wanted saving. She looked like someone who wanted a fair fight. She straightened, wiped her eyes quickly, and turned, spotting James standing there. For a heartbeat their eyes met, and he saw past the armor to the fear beneath. Then the armor snapped back into place. Brakes over. Get back to work. Yes, ma'am. James went back to the Buick, back to the honest work of bolts and gaskets and problems he could actually solve. But his mind stayed on Sarah, on the phone call, on the desperation she was trying so hard to hide. and on the growing certainty that he wasn't going to be able to just watch this place fall apart. Not anymore. By the end of the first week, James's hands told the story his mouth couldn't. Calluses forming, grease embedded under fingernails, small cuts healing in layers. He studied them Friday night in the motel bathroom mirror, turning them over under flickering fluorescent light. These weren't James Sterling's hands anymore. The thought felt like freedom. Saturday morning arrived with rain that settled in for the long haul. James drove through sheets of water and felt something he couldn't quite name. Belonging, maybe. The garage bay was closed against weather, but light spilled from windows. James parked and ran through the downpour, arriving breathless and soaked. Inside, Marcus was working on a Ford pickup, and someone new was organizing parts. A kid, maybe 19, with nervous energy. "Morning," James called, shaking water from his hair. Marcus looked up with something like approval. "Figured the rain might keep you away. Takes more than water." "Good. This is Tommy Rodriguez. Comes in weekends." Marcus gestured to the young man, who turned with eyes that immediately assessed James with wariness. "Tommy, this is Jim." "Hey." Tommy's handshake was quick, his attention already returning to parts spread before him. "Where's Sarah?" James asked, noticing her absence like a missing piece. "Office. Fighting with paperwork again." Marcus's voice carried weight. "Been in there since 6. James glanced at the office door. Closed, light seeping underneath. He could imagine her in there, bent over invoices and bills, trying to make math work that refused to cooperate. The morning wore on with the steady rhythm of rain on the metal roof and tools clicking against metal. They worked on the Ford together, Marcus teaching, James and Tommy learning, each contributing according to their skill. It felt like being part of something bigger than himself, and James found himself relaxing into it. Around 10, the front door chimed. A man walked in, and everything about him screamed money trying to look casual. Expensive jeans made to look worn, designer boots, a smile that didn't reach calculating eyes. Marcus stiffened. Tommy's hands went still. The man surveyed the shop like he was measuring it for demolition. "Morning. Sarah around?" "Office." Marcus's voice had gone flat. "She's always expecting me. Eventually." The man walked toward the office without waiting, knocked once, barely courtesy, before opening the door. "Who's that?" James asked quietly. "Derek Vaughn. Owns Vaughn Premium Motors. Also owns most of Sarah's debt now." Marcus spat the name. "Bought it from the bank 6 months ago. Been tightening the screws ever since." From the office came voices. Derek's smooth and confident. Sarah's defensive and fraying. Then Sarah's voice clear. "No, I said no. Sarah, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. You're being predatory." "That's a strong word for a business proposition." "It's the right word for offering half what this place is worth." Derek laughed. "Worth is subjective. This shop's bleeding money. I'm offering you a way out. I'd rather lose everything on my own terms. Pride's expensive, sweetheart." The condescension made James take a step toward the office before Marcus caught his arm. "Don't. She needs to fight her own battles." "If she gets it," James thought, but didn't say. The office door opened. Derek emerged unruffled, smooth smile in place. Sarah followed, and James saw what Tommy meant. She looked smaller. Not physically, but diminished. Derek nodded to Marcus. "Always a pleasure." His eyes swept over James and Tommy, dismissing them, before heading for the exit. At the door, he paused. "Oh, Sarah, the offer expires end of month. After that, I'll be significantly less generous." Then he was gone. Sarah stood in the middle of the garage, arms crossed, breathing carefully. Her eyes were too bright. "Boss?" Marcus asked gently. "I'm fine." She wasn't. "Just give me a minute." She walked out the back door into the rain without a jacket. James looked at Marcus. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough that Vaughn knows he's got her cornered. He's offering pennies on the dollar, and he can call the debt and force a sale anyway." Marcus's hands trembled with suppressed anger. "Legal robbery. Can't she refinance?" "Banks won't touch her. Vaughn made sure of that. He's got connections." Marcus's voice was bitter. "I already offered to buy in as partner. She turned me down. Won't risk my retirement savings on her sinking ship." James thought about the money sitting in his accounts. Thought about how easy it would be to solve this with one phone call. Buy out Vaughn's debt. Hell, buy the whole shop and give it back to her. But that wasn't what she needed. And it definitely wasn't what Jim Collins could do. Tommy had drifted to the back window, watching Sarah standing in the rain. She's gonna make herself sick out there. Someone should... James started. You go, Marcus said. Take her the jacket by the door. I've known her too long. She'll just tell me she's fine and mean it as a dismissal. Maybe a relative stranger will get through. James grabbed the worn canvas jacket from its hook and headed out into the weather. The rain was cold, persistent, the kind that soaked through everything. Sarah stood about 20 feet from the building, face tilted up to the sky, water streaming down her cheeks mixing with what might have been tears. James approached slowly, boots splashing through puddles. Thought you might want this. She didn't look at him. I'm fine. That's the second time you've said that in 5 minutes. Usually means the opposite. A sound escaped her. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. You don't know me well enough to know my patterns. Don't have to know you long to recognize someone who's had enough. James held out the jacket. Take it. Your pride can stay intact even if you're dry. That got her attention. She turned, eyes sharp despite the water. My pride? Your dad left you this place. You're trying to honor that. I get it. But standing in the rain, catching pneumonia doesn't honor anything except your stubbornness. For a moment, he thought she'd tell him exactly where to go. Instead, she took the jacket, pulled it on. It was too big, Marcus's jacket, but she wrapped it around herself like armor. He wants me to fail, she said quietly. Derek, he could have just bought the building from my dad years ago. But he waited. Waited until Dad died, until I inherited, until I was struggling. Because watching me fail is sweeter than just buying it clean. Why? Because my dad beat him once. Back when Derek was just starting out, he wanted to partner with Dad. Proposed some deal where he'd provide capital, and Dad would provide expertise. Except the terms basically made Dad an employee in his own shop. Sarah's hands were shaking, and not from cold. Dad told him no. Told him real partnership means equal respect. Derek never forgave that rejection. So this is revenge. This is him proving he was right all along. That pride and principles don't pay bills. She laughed bitterly. And damn it, he's winning. James watched rain run off the garage roof in steady streams. Thought about all the times he'd crushed competitors, made ruthless business decisions, prioritized profit over people. Had he ever stopped to think about the Sarah Mitchells on the other side of those decisions? Can I tell you something? He asked. Can I stop you? Probably not. James took a breath. I've watched you this week. Watched you work twice as hard as anyone should have to. Treat every customer like family. Refuse to cut corners even when corners would be easier. You know what that tells me? That I'm an idiot who doesn't know when to quit. That your dad was right. That principles do matter. And that even if Derek owns your debt, he doesn't own who you are. James turned to face her fully. My uncle used to say the measure of a person isn't what they do when winning. It's what they do when losing. You're losing right now and you're still showing up, still fighting fair, still treating people right. That's worth more than any building. Sarah was staring at him now. Really staring. Like she was trying to see past his words to whatever truth lived beneath. You're either really naive or really kind. Haven't figured out which. Can't it be both? This time her laugh was genuine, if small. Maybe. She wiped her face. Rain, tears, who could tell anymore? Thanks for the jacket. And the, whatever that was, pep talk, reality check, reminder that you're not alone in this. Something flickered across her expression. Surprise, maybe. Or hope, trying not to hope too hard. You've been here a week, Jim. You don't owe me loyalty. Maybe not, but I choose to give it anyway. The rain continued falling, but something had shifted between them. Some small wall coming down, some tiny bit of trust being offered and accepted. We should get back, Sarah said finally. Marcus will think we drowned. They walked back together through the downpour, and when they reached the door, Sarah paused with her hand on the handle. Jim? Yeah? Why are you really here? In Riverside, working for basically nothing in a dying garage? The question hit harder than she probably meant it to. James looked at this woman who was barely holding her world together, who had every reason to be bitter, but chose to fight instead, and wanted desperately to tell her the truth. But the truth would ruin everything. Because I needed to remember what matters, he said instead, and I think maybe I'm starting to. She studied him for another long moment, then nodded. Okay, that's enough for now. They went back inside where warmth and work waited, and James tried not to think about how many lies he'd have to tell to protect this fragile, real thing he was building. The afternoon passed quickly. Rain stopped around 3, leaving everything clean and bright. They finished the Ford, started on a Honda, and Tommy told a story about his first oil change that ended with him covered head to toe. Looked like a tar monster. Tommy laughed. My mom wouldn't let me in the house. Hosed me down in the yard. At least you didn't forget to tighten an oil drain plug like I did, Marcus said. Customer got 2 blocks before his engine seized. Daniel fired me, then hired me back the next morning. Said everyone gets one stupid mistake. Sarah, quiet most of the afternoon, smiled at that. Dad always said the only real mistake is not learning from them. Smart man, James said. He was. Sarah's voice carried weight. I just hope I'm half as good. You are, Marcus said firmly. You just haven't seen it yet. As the day wound down and they cleaned up, James found himself not wanting to leave. The shop felt like something he'd been searching for without knowing it. Purpose, community, belonging. Same time Monday? He asked Sarah as she locked up. If you're still crazy enough to keep showing up for $7 an hour. I am. She smiled. A real one this time, small but genuine. Then yeah, same time Monday. James drove back to the motel through streets that steamed in the evening sun, and for once didn't check his phone. Didn't think about what he'd left behind. He thought instead about a woman standing in the rain refusing to break, and wondered what it said about him that watching her fight was the most inspired he'd felt in years. Whatever it meant, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't leaving. Not until he'd helped her win. 3 weeks in, and James had stopped thinking of Riverside as temporary. The motel room had become familiar. The dripping sink, morning light at 6:15, Mrs. Patterson's game shows at full volume. He knew the waitresses at Meg's, which counterstool wobbled, what the daily soup would be. Small things. The kind you notice when you're actually living somewhere instead of passing through. Monday morning found him at the shop before Marcus. He liked the quiet before everyone arrived. Dust motes dancing in sunlight, the smell of motor oil and possibility. He was making coffee when Sarah's truck pulled up. She came in looking exhausted, carrying donuts from the bakery. Surprise flickered when she saw James. You're here early. Could say the same. Couldn't sleep. She set the donuts down hard. Figured I might as well be useful. James poured 2 coffees, handed her one. She took it with trembling hands. Thanks. She sipped, closed her eyes. God, I needed this. Rough night? Rough 3 weeks. Sarah stared at the donuts. You know that feeling when you're treading water, and the shore's right there, but your arms are getting tired? Yeah, different reasons. But he knew. I know it. I'm so tired, Jim. Barely a whisper. Of fighting. Of pretending I have this handled when everyone can see I don't. James wanted to fix it. Wanted to write a check, make phone calls, use his resources to obliterate every problem she had. But Jim Collins couldn't do that. And maybe James Sterling shouldn't. You know what I see when I look at you? He asked instead. Someone drowning slowly? Someone who shows up every single day even when it would be easier to quit. Someone who treats people with kindness she probably doesn't feel she can afford. Someone whose dad would be proud as hell of who she is. Sarah's eyes went shiny. Don't. I'm barely holding it together as it is. Maybe that's okay. Maybe holding it together is overrated. She laughed, watery, but real. Easy for you to say. You're not one bad day from losing everything. If only she knew how recently he'd felt exactly that way. Different kind of everything, maybe. But the terror was the same. Marcus arrived before James could respond, and the moment broke. But something had shifted, some small intimacy shared and acknowledged. The day brought steady customers, which should have been good. Except Sarah kept disappearing for phone calls, emerging more strained each time. Around noon, James heard raised voices from the office. Sarah and an unfamiliar male voice, both tense. He glanced at Marcus, who shook his head. Not our business. But when Sarah's voice cracked with real distress, James moved closer. Trying to work with you, the male voice said. Older, weary. But you're 3 months behind. I've got my own bills. I know, Mr. Henderson. Just need a few more weeks. You said that last month. Sarah, your daddy was my friend. but my suppliers are breathing down my neck. I need payment or I can't deliver next month's parts. But I have customers waiting. Then figure something out. I'm sorry. A man in his 60s emerged, face lined with regret. He nodded to Marcus as he passed. After he left, silence pressed down like physical weight. James found Sarah still in the office, forehead pressed against the desk, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She was clearly trying to muffle. He knocked gently on the door frame. "Sarah?" She jerked upright, swiping furiously at her face. "I'm fine. Just give me a minute." "You keep saying that." James came in despite the dismissal, pulled up the rickety chair across from her desk. "And you keep not being fine." "What do you want me to say?" Her voice came out raw. "That I'm failing? That I'm watching everything my dad built fall apart because I'm not good enough to hold it together? There. Happy? You're not failing. The system's failing you." Sounds like something someone says when they're losing. She pulled out a ledger, pages covered in her handwriting. Numbers that clearly didn't add up no matter how many times she ran them. 3 months behind on parts suppliers, 2 months behind on property taxes. The bank payment's due in 2 weeks and I'm $400 short. Derek's offer expires in 10 days. Her laugh was bitter. "And you know the worst part? I'm actually considering it." "Don't. Easy for you to say. It's not your family legacy going up in smoke." James thought about Sterling Capital, about the empire he'd built that meant nothing compared to this struggling garage where people actually cared about each other. Sometimes keeping the legacy alive means changing what it looks like. What's that supposed to mean? It means your dad's legacy isn't the building, it's the values, the integrity, the way you treat people. James leaned forward. "Derek can buy the property, but he can't buy what your father really built. That lives in you." Sarah was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made James nervous, like she could see through the disguise if she looked hard enough. "Why do you care so much?" she asked finally. "You barely know me. You've been here 3 weeks. This isn't your fight." "Because I'm falling for you," James thought, but couldn't say. "Because watching you fight reminds me what courage looks like. Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being about finding myself and started being about helping you find your way through. Maybe I just believe in what you're trying to do," he said instead. She held his gaze for 3 heartbeats, then looked away. "Well, believing doesn't pay bills." "No, but it keeps you showing up to fight another day." The afternoon brought unexpected grace. Mrs. Thompson arrived for her Buick. 70-something, permed hair, floral dress. What James didn't expect was her reaction. "Oh." Her hand went to her mouth. "You even waxed it. Can't deliver a car dirty." Marcus grinned. "Henry bought me this car, brand new, 1985. Said powder blue matched my eyes." Her voice went soft. "He's been gone 8 years, but every time I drive it, I feel like he's riding shotgun." Tears ran freely. "My kids want me to get something new. But this car is my Henry. You just gave me a few more years with him." Sarah crossed over and hugged her. Not professional. Real. "Your husband had good taste," Sarah said, "in cars and women." Mrs. Thompson laughed through tears, then paid, with Sarah charging half what the work was worth. After she drove away, James approached. "You undercharged her." "I charged what she could afford. That's not how businesses work." Sarah's eyes flashed. "That's exactly how my dad's business worked. Mrs. Thompson's on fixed income. She needs that car. I need to sleep at night." She pocketed the bills. "Besides, that extra she gave me was $40 she couldn't afford either. That's worth more than full price." James thought about all the times he'd squeezed every penny from deals, maximized profits, prioritized shareholders over people. When had he lost sight of the fact that businesses were made of humans, not just numbers? "Your dad taught you well," he said quietly. "He taught me that how you treat people is the only thing that matters in the end." Sarah looked at the bills in her hand. "I just wish it paid the electric bill." Late afternoon brought chaos. Tommy was under a Honda when the lift shuddered, groaned, hydraulics failing with the car still on it, and Tommy underneath. "Tommy!" Marcus shouted. "Roll out!" But Tommy froze, fear locking him in place as metal groaned above. James didn't think. He dove under, grabbed Tommy's coveralls, yanked him clear just as the lift gave way completely. The Honda crashed down with a sound like thunder. Silence. Then Tommy gasping, James's heart hammering, Marcus checking them for injuries. "You okay?" "I'm okay." Tommy shook violently. "Oh God, I could have. If Jim hadn't—" "You're okay." James gripped his shoulder, his own hands trembling. Sarah appeared, white-faced. "What happened?" "Lift failed." Marcus examined the mechanism with shaking hands. "Haven't had it serviced. Couldn't afford it." His voice broke. "Jesus, I almost got this kid killed." "It's not your fault," Sarah whispered, but guilt crushed her visibly. Tommy sat up slowly, looked at James with awe. "You saved my life. Just pulled you out. You didn't freeze. I froze." Unsteady voice. "Thank you." Marcus called Tommy's mother. She arrived in 10 minutes, gathered her son close, turned to Sarah with eyes that could have held blame but didn't. "This could have been bad. I know. I'm so sorry. But it wasn't. Because you have good people who look out for each other." She looked at James. "Thank you for saving my boy." After they left, Sarah sank onto an overturned bucket, head in hands. Marcus stared at the collapsed lift like an accusation. "I can't do this anymore," Sarah said. "I can't keep cutting corners hoping nothing breaks. I can't risk people's lives because I'm too proud to admit I'm failing." "Sarah," Marcus started. "No." She looked up, face streaked with tears and grease. "That's someone's child." What if Jim hadn't been fast enough? What if Tommy had been hurt? Or worse? Her voice broke completely. "My dad never would have let equipment get that bad. He would have shut down before risking anyone. Your dad had money for repairs," Marcus said gently. "Then maybe I don't deserve to keep this place." Sarah stood, wiped her face. "Maybe Derek's right. Maybe I should sell before someone actually gets hurt." "That's exhaustion talking," James said. "That's reality talking." But she looked at him with something raw in her expression. "You could have been hurt, too. Pulling Tommy out like that, you didn't even hesitate. Neither would you." "Maybe, but you're the one who did it." She crossed to him, and for a moment James thought she might hug him. Instead, she just held his gaze, something unspoken passing between them. "Thank you. For him. For being here. Where else would I be?" The question hung there, loaded with meanings neither of them could fully voice. Marcus cleared his throat. "I'm calling it. We're done for today. Everyone goes home, gets some rest, comes back tomorrow with clear heads." For once, no one argued. James drove back to the motel in silence, hands still shaking slightly on the wheel. He kept seeing Tommy's face frozen in fear, kept feeling that split second of decision. Act or don't act, save him or freeze. At the motel, he sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before finally going inside. His corporate phone, the one he'd been ignoring for weeks, sat on the nightstand where he'd left it. 47 missed calls now, 86 unread texts. James picked it up, turned it on. The messages were predictable. Urgent matters that weren't actually urgent. Crises that would resolve themselves. People demanding attention they didn't really need. One message stood out. Richard, his CFO. "Board wants to declare you unfit if you don't resurface soon. Please respond. This is getting serious." James stared at the phone for a long moment. Then he composed a message. "I'm fine. I'll be back when I'm back. Hold the fort." He almost hit send. His thumb hovered over the button. Then he thought about Sarah's face when she realized Tommy could have died. Thought about Mrs. Thompson crying over a car that held her husband's memory. Thought about Marcus teaching him patience, and Tommy learning to trust, and a whole community held together by a garage that might not survive the month. James deleted the message. Turned the phone off. Tomorrow he'd figure out how to help, how to save the shop without revealing who he was, how to be the person Sarah needed without betraying the trust he'd built. Tonight he'd just be grateful everyone had made it home safe. And try not to think about how much harder it was getting to remember why he'd ever thought his old life mattered more than this one. The call came at 6 in the morning. James was already awake when his corporate phone buzzed. Richard, his CFO. "Where the hell are you?" Richard's voice was tight. "The board's threatening a hostile takeover. Emergency meeting this afternoon or they vote you out." James sat up slowly. "Let them." "Let them? Are you insane?" "I know what I'm doing. I'll handle it." James ended the call. He sat in the pre-dawn darkness, hands shaking. Not from fear, from realization. It was time to stop hiding. Sarah arrived at the shop to find an expensive sedan parked outside. Her stomach dropped, but inside wasn't Derek. It was a man in a tailored suit, silver hair, expensive briefcase. Marcus looked wary. "He's looking for Jim Collins." The man turned. "Ms. Mitchell? I'm Robert Chen, attorney. I'm looking for James Sterling." He showed her a photo on his tablet. Expensive suit, polished appearance, but the face was unmistakable. "Jim." "Who is James Sterling?" Sarah's voice barely steady. "CEO of Sterling Capital. Net worth approximately $3.2 billion. He disappeared 4 weeks ago." The room tilted. $3 billion. CEO. Everything Jim had told her. Lies. "Get out." Sarah's voice was cold. "Get out of my shop." Chen left his card and departed. Marcus spoke first. "Boss?" He lied. Everything. The whole time. The door opened. James walked in with coffee from Meg's like every morning. He saw Sarah's face and stopped. "Sarah, is it true? Are you James Sterling?" His face drained of color. His shoulders sagged. "Yes." That word destroyed something inside her. "Get out. Please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you lied for a month? That you let me cry about money while you're a billionaire? That you pretended to understand struggle?" Tears streamed down her face. "Was this funny to you? Poor Sarah and her failing garage?" "No! God, no, Sarah! I said get out! You're fired! Take your lies and your billions and get out of my shop." "Sarah, I came here because I needed to find out who I was without the money." "You found a good story? Something for cocktail parties? Poor people are so authentic." Her laugh was bitter. "Congratulations. Now leave." He set the coffee down and walked out. Sarah collapsed, sobbing. Marcus knelt beside her, silent. James drove without destination. Ended up at a rest stop, staring at nothing. Richard called. "Meeting's in 4 hours. If you're not there, you lose everything." "I already lost everything. Fine. I'll be there." He drove to his penthouse, put on the suit that felt like a costume. The board meeting was accusations and threats, until James stood. "I've been working in a small-town garage for $7 an hour, learning what it means to earn something instead of just accumulating it." He looked around the table. "I met someone who chose integrity over profit every day, who fought to honor her father's legacy, and I realized we're building bigger walls between us and everything that actually matters." He pulled out his phone. "I'm proposing a small business fund. $500 million, dedicated to helping family businesses stay afloat. No predatory terms, just support." "That's insane," someone sputtered. "That's purpose." James smiled. "Vote me out if you want, but I don't want to run a company that only values extraction over investment in actual lives." The room erupted. James was already leaving. He had somewhere more important to be. Sarah was staring at unpayable bills when Marcus knocked. "Derek's here. With his attorney." Derek walked in smiling. "Sarah, we're here to foreclose. Payment's overdue. I'm calling the debt." Sarah's heart stopped. "You said end of month. I said my offer expired. The debt's due now." His smile was sharp. 48 hours to vacate." "You can't." "I can." He looked around with satisfaction. "Demolished by next week." They left, and Sarah sat in the ruins of everything. She was still sitting there at sunset when someone knocked. James stood there, hands raised. "I know you don't want to see me, but please, let me say what I came to say." Every instinct screamed to send him away, but something in his face made her nod. "You were right. About everything. I lied, and there's no excuse." James took a breath. 4 weeks ago I was suffocating. I had everything money could buy and nothing that mattered. So I ran. Found your shop. Thought I'd play it being normal, then go back. Sarah listened. Except I stopped playing. Working with my hands, earning honest wages, being part of something real. It wasn't a game. It was the first real thing I'd felt in years. His voice cracked. I wanted to stay. Every morning I woke up excited to come here. You taught me what wealth actually means. You watched me struggle with bills you could pay with pocket change. Because you never needed my money. You needed someone to believe in you, to see your strength. He pulled out an envelope. But I should have helped when I could. Inside was a check. Enough to pay Derek, repair the lift, cover months of operation. I don't want pity money. It's not pity. Sterling Capital just created a small business fund. You're the first recipient. 0 interest, no repayment schedule. I can't. Yes, you can. Pay off Derek. Keep doing what you do. I don't want credit. I just want this place to survive. He moved toward the door. I'm sorry, Sarah. For everything. Why didn't you just buy out Derek weeks ago? James turned back. Because that would have been me solving your problem. You needed to fight your own battle. I just wanted to be beside you. And now? Now I'll try to make my life mean something. Thanks to you, I understand what that looks like. He smiled sadly. Goodbye, Sarah. He left, and Sarah stood holding a check that solved every problem, except the one that mattered most. Marcus found her an hour later. What are you doing, boss? Thinking about how he saved Tommy without hesitating, how he showed up every day, how he looked at this place like it mattered. Sarah looked at the check. He lied about his name and money, but everything else, the person he was here, that wasn't a lie. So what now? Something probably stupid. She grabbed her keys and ran. James was packing when she knocked. His penthouse felt like a mausoleum. He opened the door. Sarah stood there. How did you? Rich people aren't hard to find. She pushed past him. Wow, this is really something. It's empty. Sarah, what are you doing here? Returning your check. She smiled. Already deposited it. Paid Derek, but I'm not keeping it for free. I don't understand. Investors get equity. I'm offering you 25% partnership, but you work for it. Same $7 an hour. Same dirty hands. No special treatment. James stared. You want me to come back? I want the real you, not James Sterling, billionaire, not Jim Collins, fake mechanic. Just you, the guy who saved Tommy, who listened, who made me laugh. Her voice softened. The guy I was falling for. I'm still a billionaire, but you changed. You became someone real. She stepped closer. My dad used to say you judge people by what they choose to become. You chose to become someone who cares. I lied to you. You did. That hurt. But you also saved my garage and reminded me why it's worth saving. Sarah took his hand. I'm still mad. We've got a lot to work through, but I think we're worth fighting for. James pulled her close. I don't deserve you. Probably not. But you're going to try, right? Every single day. She kissed him. Forgiveness and new beginnings and everything real. So, partners? Partners. James grinned. But I want a raise. $750. Final offer. Deal. 6 months later, Mitchell's auto repair gleamed under fresh paint. New lift installed. Updated equipment humming. But the soul remained unchanged. Marcus teaching a new apprentice. Tommy working part-time while attending community college on scholarship. Customers still treated like family. James worked alongside Sarah every day, hands permanently stained with honest work, face lit with something he'd never found in boardrooms. Sterling Capital continued under new management, the small business fund already helping 43 family operations across the country stay afloat. Applications came in daily. Restaurants, bookstores, farms, all fighting to honor legacies built by people who cared more about values than valuations. On their first anniversary of meeting, Sarah and James stood in the garage after closing. You ever regret it? Sarah asked. Giving up the penthouse for this? James looked around, the workbenches, the customer photos, the break room where they shared coffee every morning. Every day I wake up sore, he said honestly. Every day my back reminds me I'm not 20. Every day I work harder than I ever did behind a desk. He pulled her close. And I've never been happier. Why? I used to think success meant having more. I'd wake up in that penthouse feeling hollow, like I was winning a game that didn't matter. His hand found hers. Now I wake up grateful. For coffee with Marcus. For Tommy's questions. For Mrs. Thompson's cookies. For you. Is that what wealth means now? Wealth is waking up knowing your day has purpose beyond profit. It's the kid whose car you fixed getting to his job. It's seeing Marcus smile when his apprentice does something right. He cupped her face. It's fighting beside you for what matters. Sarah's eyes shimmered. Dad used to say the richest people aren't the ones with the most money. They're the ones with the most reasons to be grateful. He was right about everything. You know what he'd say if he met you? That you're a man who finally figured out what matters. She kissed him softly. He'd like the real you. The guy with grease under his nails. I'm still figuring out who that guy is. That's okay. We're all figuring it out. She rested against his chest. But I'm glad you're figuring it out here. They stood in comfortable silence. The garage settling, cooling metal ticking, distant evening traffic, the sense of belonging. You know the real measure of wealth? James asked. Tell me. It's not what you have. It's what you'd miss if it was gone. He gestured around. If I lost every dollar tomorrow, I'd miss nothing from my old life. But losing this, you, Marcus, Tommy, this community, his voice caught. That would make me truly poor. Sarah squeezed his hands. You're not going to lose this. We're partners. Partners. In every way that matters. They locked up together, turning off lights, checking locks. Outside, Riverside settled into evening. Porch lights flickering, the diner's neon sign glowing, people walking home with tired but satisfied faces. Simple rhythms James once would have found boring. Now he found them beautiful. As they walked to Sarah's truck, James looked back at the shop. The hand-painted sign, the old brick, the promise of tomorrow. Home, he said quietly. Yeah, home. And James Sterling, who'd once had everything and felt nothing, finally understood. True wealth wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in moments that mattered, in hands held and work shared, in becoming someone you could be proud of, in building something that would outlast you because of values, not money. It was waking up every day and choosing to show up, choosing to care, choosing to be part of something bigger. That was the only kind of rich that truly counted.